Now, tonight, as we mentioned at the top, good news after President Trump called on Iran to release 8 women set to be executed for protesting today. All 8 will be spared death, 4 immediately released from prison, and the other 4 sentenced to 1 month in jail. Anyway, here with more, retired Navy captain, Heritage founder, senior fellow Brent Sadler is with us. Brent, well, maybe, you know, thank God for small victories, but some of these girls were 16 years old.
No, absolutely. It's just another symbol of, or an example of how barbaric and brutal this regime is. Their only objective and concern in Tehran, the IRGC, is the continuation of their authority and power. And I think that's the key metric. If it assures them continued power in their country, no matter what the cost to their people and their country, they'll take that in order to stay in power.
Yeah, you know, Brett, I'm looking at this, and I understand what the Pakistani prime minister has been telling the president. He's saying, Mr. President, I know this, as absurd as it sounds in this day and age of communication, the idea that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps can communicate with the people that have been negotiating in Islamabad, and that would be an easy task. Actually, it's not an easy task. One, I would argue they probably fear picking up a phone. Number two, I'm not even sure if they get a cell phone connection to begin with. So my understanding is, and my sources have told me, they're actually doing it through courier. Have you heard the same?
No, that would make sense. I do think there's quite a lot of channels that they could use. Even in Tehran, they could go through third-party embassies to deliver messages quicker as well. If there's a will, there's a way. Even with the risk, again, if the risk is high, but the reward, getting a deal that ensures that they stay in power, they'll go for it. And thankfully, that doesn't appear to be on the table, but comms, or at least communications, getting through.
Let's talk about the blockade and the amount of money that Iran is not bringing in on a daily basis, $400 to $500 million. That is a lot. Oil basically is their economy. Right now, they are looking at a 200% inflation rate. Their currency is worth zero. Half their workforce, according to reports, are out of work. This has had a devastating impact. Will that have any impact on radical Islamist thinking? Because they had an opportunity to stop Midnight Hammer. They did not. Epic Fury, they could have stopped that. They did not. They keep making the wrong choice.
Well, human life's not part of the equation. It's about pure power and control of the populace in Iran and the continuation of the IRGC, or the mullah's dominance of all political power in Iran. So if the blockade, and I think it's a shrewd move because all the risk is on the Iranians and all of the benefit to the United States to apply more and more pressure, I think it gets at the heart of the issue. It starts to take away the ability for the regime to maintain power and its authority. And I think it's a matter of time, and it can be accelerated before they realize that there's no way out, no other options than capitulation.
Yeah, Brent Sadler, the only thing I can say is, at this point, I think the president now has reached the end point. And, you know, in spite of acting as many times as he has, if the Iranians misinterpret this, boy, that would be really, really dumb on their part. But radicalism, I guess, trumps common sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think if there's another attack by the Iranians, the latest one appears to be more towards the Iranian designated shipping routes. So that's an odd way to treat those that are honoring their deal. But if there's another attack like we saw over the weekend, I think there needs to be a measured response, because I think that's also part of the IRGC probing and prodding to see how much they can get away with. And again, try to resurrect whatever lingering leverage they might have over control of the Hormuz Strait, which is really evaporated a couple weeks ago.
All right, Brent Sadler, thank you for your insight tonight. Breaking news out of Virginia, the Commonwealth. A state court just declared that last night's gerrymandering vote was, in fact, as we predicted, unconstitutional. All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.